Hello, and welcome to Represent NYC on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. I'm Inez E. Dickens, and today I'll be talking about real estate taxes and how it affects homeowners or potential homeowners. Currently, the New York City real estate taxes are impacting homeowners and prospective homeowners with the rise of water bills and real estate bills. The negative impact upon multi-dwelling families, homeowners, and to those with the hardest difficulties, that are the families with single incomes. They are all struggling to achieve that great American dream. I have the immense pleasure to have a diverse panel that understands the reality of real estate taxes and the future for homeowners. We have Assembly Member Keith L.T. Wright, representing the 70th Assembly District and the Assembly's Housing Committee Chair. Christie Peale, Executive Director for Center for New York City Neighborhoods, that is committed to prioritizing and protecting affordable home ownership for all New Yorkers. Ms. Peale has worked for public service organizations in the New York City area since 1994 and been with the center since 2011. Commissioner Jacques Jiha, New York City Department of Finance, was appointed by the mayor over a year ago and has over 25 years of success in public finance prior to his appointment. This is a very important topic, and I'm so glad that we're here to discuss ownership and the impact that real estate taxes and water bills has on the option of whether a family can afford a home or not. Christie, can you please tell me what is the present state of own a home in New York City, please?
Sure. So, especially in Upper Manhattan, a lot of people think of New York as a city of multifamily buildings with a lot of apartments, but actually there are 600,000 one to four family owner-occupied properties throughout the city. I mean, that's more properties than you see in Detroit and some of the smaller cities around the country. So we have a small city of folks that are in these one to four family properties that are, providing really good rental housing to their tenants. They're great landlords, and the majority of them are making working class salaries. So, there's a lot of challenges to maintaining a home in the city. Not only have we gotten through the foreclosure crisis with a lot of folks really beaten up and still struggling, but Sandy has impacted a lot of homeowners, and we're also seeing folks really struggle, especially in neighborhoods where the market is increasing, with keeping up with their, obligations to the city with taxes
I
and
agree,
sewer,
because
yeah.
in my district, in the Upper West Side, of course in the boroughs of Queens, the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Staten Island all have one to four families that are prevalent throughout the various council districts. And so it's very important to us that home ownership remain intact. Absolutely. Because it allows for you to have a stake in your community, as well as the fact that there are taxes that are paid. Yeah. And they provide quality, viable housing alternatives that are in smaller units for other families.
Absolutely.
And having said that, Commissioner, the City Council has not raised the rate, yet the real estate tax bills are escalating phenomenally, and the water bills has more than quadrupled, which has prevented many people from continuing to own these homes. Can you tell me how the Department of Finance does their calculation that allows for these bills to escalate when the council has not changed the rate?
Yes, thank you for having me on your show. You have to understand that one of the key factors that impact tax is the market price of properties in New York City. And as you know, people are always happy to discuss how much the value of the property have increased over time. They always brag about it, but that also means that as the value of a property goes up, your taxes will also go up. So we start, the process is a very complicated process. It starts with us basically determining the value of your property using comparable properties, that are sold in your neighborhood. From there, we have an assessment ratio, which is a portion that the state dictates. The state dictates for class 1 property, like for instance, single home, that the property we could only tax 6% of that value of that property, okay? On top of that, the state imposes a cap of 6% a year. So the assessed value of a property cannot go up by more than 6% a year and 20% over 5 years, okay? So even though the market value of your property goes up, okay, we still cannot fully tax your property because the state imposes a cap, okay? Not only we could only assess the property at 6%, but there is also a cap of 6% on the property. So the market value, even though the council has not raised the rate, but the fact that the market value of the property goes up, that's going to be reflected in your tax bill.
Well,
But
Commissioner.
as I said, there is also a cap that, that the full increase is not really translated into, in terms of market value, is not fully translated in terms of tax increase because of the cap imposed by the state.
Well, thank goodness that it's not fully taxed, because the homeowners are taxed in such a way that it's almost unconscionable is what's happening to them. And in addition to that, I might add that when you base it upon comparables, is it really truly comparables? Because you may have a brownstone in one part of the same block, and maybe five buildings down, there's another brownstone, and that brownstone went for sale for one price, and because it had maybe rental units that increased the value, and yet the first one maybe only had 2 units or was occupied by one family, and therefore their assessment went up just as well. And so I think that when we consider comparables, and I do come from a real estate background, and I have also been an appraiser, then it's incumbent upon, when we use comparables, that it's really truly comparables, and not because in the neighborhood a particular building was sold for a higher market rate. Assembly Member, as you know, the Assembly is the one that's charged with setting our taxes and our as well as our rates. Really, as a city, we set a rate, but we also have to apply to Albany
for the permission to do so.
For the permission to do
That's
so.
right. That's right.
And so that's why I asked you to be on, because you could really discuss with us our Mitchell-Lamas. Mitchell-Lama is a program that allowed for ownership, affordable ownership of units within multifamily buildings. However, what has happened with many of our Mitchell-Lamas, their tax incentives have been completed, and the assessments went up by DOF, Commissioner, and then suddenly they're hit with a high real estate tax bill, and they don't. The owners have no idea what hit them.
Right.
What can Albany do to prevent such action from occurring?
Well, first of all, Council Member, I'm very happy and glad that you're having this show. I'm glad we have the guests that we do have so that we can inform our constituency, the members of the public, as to really what's going on. I'm glad we're able to get into the weeds of the issue to a certain extent. Home ownership, it's something that you, myself, most of us in public life have been espousing, have encouraged. I remember when I was growing up, home ownership, you had folks that owned their homes, you had folks that rented their homes, and you had folks that live in these Mitchell-Lama developments. So what it created was a real sense of neighborhood. Anytime you have a economic mix in a neighborhood, it makes for a stronger neighborhood economically, and also makes for a stronger neighborhood in terms of just being a community. It's interesting that the commissioner talked about the caps, the tax caps that were mandated by Albany. I remember the taxes, the home real estate taxes and the home ownership taxes were a big campaign issue maybe around 5 or 6 years ago. And I think it's ground zero of the high real estate taxes were in Long Island or in Westchester County in particular. So those folks were almost, started a revolt with their elected officials. So we put these property tax caps in place. And it's not just in Long Island, it's not just in Westchester, but we in the city, the Mitchell-Lama program, probably one of the greatest programs, home ownership programs for those of us, especially in the city of New York. My mother actually still lives in a Mitchell-Lama, one of the great Mitchell-Lamas in the city. But what's happening is those programs are now expiring. Those programs, those tax benefits for those programs are now expiring. So as chair of the Housing Committee, for the first time in our state budget, our $150 billion state budget, we were able to put in some protections, maybe I think to the tune of about $50 million to save our Mitchell-Lamas. And whether that's money going to be used for their real estate taxes and such, I think has to be decided. But it's a first step because saving our Mitchell-Lamas is so important here in the city of New York. And I was just talking to the commissioner off camera about how difficult it is for our young people now. I have a son just coming out of college, and he's finding it difficult. He does a nice little job, but finding it difficult in order to find his own apartment.
He'll stay with you forever.
He's been staying with me for a while, and I want to kick him out as soon as possible, but it's just difficult for our young people so that we can create the natural evolution of our neighborhoods. It used to be back in the old days that you get out of college, you get your own apartment, start your own family, and generations continue. Now a young person needs at least $70,000 in salary in order to get their own apartment. So, but our Mitchell-Lama is our prized housing stock that really has to be preserved, and we have to really think of some creative ways in order to save it. And it starts with the capping of the real estate taxes on those properties after the expiration of this program.
I think it's a very critical issue, to be honest with you, with the privatization of the Mitchell-Lama's properties, condo co-ops. It's a very critical issue in terms of, and one of the reasons people were complaining about DOF, they see the property tax increase because when you privatize the Mitchell-Lamas, the value significantly increased.
Oh boy.
Okay, so what we did was we tried to slow down the conversion by imposing some kind of a property transfer tax so that we could discourage people from doing the conversion, but we lost in court. Okay, so we have to find ways, we have to think about ways to try to maintain, to preserve those Mitchell-Lama's properties from converting.
Very important.
I can't believe the 50 years, I think it was a 50-year program that
has expired
already.
Exactly, and that is going to negatively impact upon home ownership within the city of New York. It's going to change the dynamics of most of our neighborhoods, and it's just downright unconscionable.
Yeah, I mean, your program used to be like 105,000 units. It's down to about 45,000 units now. So it's a significant reduction. So we have to slow down that process.
Now, in 2009, a program that New York City had, that the council enacted, provided a $400 annual rebate as a step for homeowners. If the city council was to enact legislation like that again, of course with the approval of the state, do you, Commissioner, feel that that would help in allowing for home ownership to be sought, secured, protected?
Well, we have to analyze this within context of the budget. I cannot just talk about it in a vacuum until I see the full ramification of that thing. But in principle,
Commissioner, the reason I asked that question because in 2009 we were just right in the middle of an economic downfall, and yet, it had started really in 2007 and it really got to the city in 2008, and during that time we had this protection. And that was during a time when the city was realizing less revenue. And of course, coming out of the city council, I understand budgeting and understand revenue versus spending. And the mayor has set forth a stringent and aggressive program for affordable housing. And this would be one way of protecting that and actually creating affordability. So would you be supportive of something of that
Well, that's
nature?
what I said. You know, you have to look at in the context of the different options that we have to analyze, and whether or not the city will get the best best result for its dollar using this method versus using other methods. So, you know, that's what I'm saying. You have to look at it in the context of the budget and the different options, the different scenarios, before we could make a rational decision to say, you know what, this is a better way to spend that money versus that method. I mean, the ultimate goal is to create more affordable units within the city and to keep people in their home as much as possible, to make it but we have to use the method that we use to achieve those objectives have to be very cost efficient.
Christie, there is proposed legislation that would establish a new property tax classification for properties held in condominium and cooperative forms that has been introduced by Assembly Member Braunstein from Queens. And State Senator Stavisky is in support, also from Flushing, Queens. Do you think this new classification would indeed help homeownership?
Well, it depends how the units are classified relative to the tax code. But I think that what's exciting about what Councilmember Vaca has proposed in the City Council for the re-upping of this 2009 benefit is that it would be tied to income. And the income I saw in the latest draft was around $100,000. So it would really be targeted at folks that are not, making very high incomes, but are really trying to maintain what we call naturally occurring affordable housing. Because I think what's challenging about the mayor's housing plan for the 1 to 4 family stock is that we want to find a way to include all those naturally occurring units and bring them into that, protected class of affordable housing. And a tax benefit like this could really help. What we see with folks that are maintaining properties to the best of their ability, it's really challenging for folks on fixed incomes or folks whose incomes have not kept pace with, the increase in property values. So your assessment may go up, your taxes may go up, but your income hasn't increased with the market, and that's a huge issue across the city. So targeting this type of benefit to folks on fixed incomes or folks on $100,000 is nothing to sneeze at, but in comparison to some of the wealthier folks in the city, those are the people that we want to keep and stabilize. So I think that what Councilmember Vaca has been proposing is really helpful in terms of starting the conversation, helping us create more tools. I think we need as many tools as possible in the toolbox to help bring people into the 200,000 units of affordability, and that's one way to do that. And so I think that if the condo and co-op classification helps in that respect as well, that's another tool.
Well, I agree, and I have read the proposed legislation or proposed thing that the council member has spoke about, referring to the 2009 $400 rebate, which he's writing it slightly different, and it's taking a life of its own, and that I'm supportive of it, and many of the residents in the city of New York throughout the 5 boroughs are very supportive of it. Do you think that might pass in the city council?
I think it has legs. It's got good life, and I think that when we talk to the council members throughout the city, they're all really anxious to create more tools to support homeownership and to support the 1 to 4 family property owners. So
so many of us have those types of buildings in our districts: the Upper West Side, the Upper East Side, all have many brownstones.
Right.
And we're fighting to preserve those areas, and that would do so. Assembly Member, same question to you on the creation of a new tax classification for condos.
Sure. As the commissioner has just spoken about, as I've spoken about, I mean, we are in the year 2015. Sometimes the laws that we passed back in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, they were good for those times, but now we have to start thinking more creatively. We have to think of what's going on politically, governmentally, and also in our day-to-day living on what we should do right here and right now. So creating a new class could help. And you talked about the rebate. Certainly anytime you can put money back into the economy, anytime we can put money back into people's pockets, it will spur an economic growth. Anytime people have money, they spend the money. They usually spend the money. So what stabilizes neighborhoods? What stabilizes communities? You know, the recycling of dollars, the spending of
That's
dollars,
correct. That's
the
correct.
spending of dollars. $400 may not be a lot to some folks, but it could be
Councilmember Vargas was 500.
500,
increased it from
400,
400 to
500,
500.
and that's fine, and that's great. I mean, anytime, $500, $400 or $500 may not be a lot to some folks, but quite frankly, it's a lot to me. It's probably a lot to other folks, as Christie was talking about. It's the anytime you can put money in people's pockets, it will spur economic growth, and it would possibly go to spurring more home ownership, which is what, quite frankly, what the city needs. We are a big city of renters in a lot of ways, but as I said earlier, anytime you have an economic mix of homeowners and renters and such, it makes for a better and a stronger community.
30% of our
Yeah.
property is home ownership,
Homeownership,
including the
yeah.
condos and
Sure.
co-ops.
Which is
Absolutely.
quite a
It's
large
big,
percentage.
1/3.
It's you know
Over there.
it's great. So we want to preserve that.
Absolutely, we do.
Must.
Commissioner, one last question for you is regarding liens, the lien sales. The city, the 5 boroughs, we don't have as much vacant land and abandoned properties as we once did. I am a child of the 60s, so I grew up with a lot of abandoned lots and abandoned buildings that left neighborhoods devastated. We don't have that, and the city did in-rim where they took the properties, and of course the city never has been the best landlord, I might add. However, now the city sells the liens, and what's happening is, particularly with our seniors, they're losing their houses. They don't even know. They didn't even understand that the lien was sold by the city to a private investor that is not going to live there, and removing them from their homes. What can DOF do to slow that impact down of the sale? I have really always been against the sale of liens to private sector investors that have no connection to the communities and come in and move people out.
First, I would say that this is what I call a last resort. You know, it's not something, that's not a tool that we like to use, to be quite honest with you. It's if you owe the city like over $1,000 for over 3 years, that's when your property is eligible to be included in the lien sale. One thing I tell folks all the time is do not ignore the notices that we send to you. You only become part of the lien sale when you do not respond to our notices, okay? So we send about 5 notices to people every year to let them know about their tax obligations.
Is it responding to the notice, Commissioner,
no,
or
because-
is it your ability to enter into an agreement?
That's what I was saying. Okay, because we send notices to people, and I tell folks all the time, once you receive the notice, please contact us, because what happens is if you have financial difficulties and you cannot meet your tax obligations, we will set up a payment plan for you that would allow you, okay, to meet your obligations. So it's from our perspective is, as you know, we have an obligation to make sure that everybody in the city contributes toward city services, because everybody consumes city services, everybody's paying for it. It would be unfair to have some people pay for it and some people don't. So what we do is we tell folks, okay, please do not ignore the notices that we send to you, Because what we do is we do a major outreach every year. We work with the city council members. We put ad in different newspapers. We tell folks about, we send notices. So once you receive a notice, please call us if you have some difficulty, because we will make a payment plan,
appreciate that.
okay, that would allow you, okay, to meet your tax
I appreciate that.
obligations.
Sometimes those plans are a little difficult for people to meet those payment plans, I might add. But I just want to, because we're about to close, but I want to ask one thing from you, Christie, and that is really, when we talk about this, and my office used to have a meeting just about when the DOF would publish these lists.
Yep.
I would send my staff out. We would go and knock on doors, and DOF would come into my district. So do you think something like that would help if DOF would do that in many of the council districts?
I
Short
think
answer.
We
the
do. We
partnerships
do.
with the city council are critical to getting homeowners off the lien sale list. You've done a fantastic job with that, and it helps year over year. Because you did that years ago, now you don't have a lot of properties on the lien sale list, so you should be congratulated for that. And we've done a tax lien tracker with the Department of Finance data, so you can go on there by community district or city council district and see where the concentration is. And it's critical right now that folks call to get in payment plans.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. This has been a great discussion, and I want to thank Assembly Member Wright, Ms. Peale, and Commissioner Jiha for being here and sharing their insight. I am Inez E. Dickens, representing the New York City Council, and I want to represent NYC, and you may contact me at 212-788-7397 with any suggestions you may have on how to tackle this issue or any other questions and comments. Thank you for watching Represent NYC on Manhattan Neighborhood Network.